Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Ridge Community Church podcast. My name is John. I'm one of the pastors on staff at the Ridge, and our vision is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. So as a piece of that, our goal each week is to bring you something that's hopeful and helpful. So subscribe to this podcast to make sure you don't miss any hopeful and helpful conversations. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Ridge Community Church podcast. If you find today's episode hopeful and helpful, then please follow or subscribe, and then rate and review so that more people can find the conversation. Quick programming note, in a few weeks, we're going to do a Q&A podcast with the lead pastor of the Ridge, Mark White. You can find a link to ask a question. Now that can be about faith, leadership, family, or really anything in our show notes. Now for today's episode, I'm really excited to share a conversation that I got to have with Darcy and Cody. They've been married for 6 years. They have 2 young kids that you might hear at some point in the conversation. And I just love the insights and perspective that they have to share, just the things that have been helpful in their marriage and what they've learned, how they've grown. They share what they wish they knew going into marriage, how they've had to learn and grow, and what it's like when kids enter the picture, and more. This is my conversation with Darcy and Cody. Hi, Darcy and Cody. Thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, John.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, would you guys mind just having a little bit of an intro? Like, could you share a little bit about yourself? What does your guys' family look like?
Yeah, we're currently a family of 4. It's myself, my wife Darcy, and then we have a 2.5-year-old who is just coming down the stairs, even though it's late at night and past her bedtime. And
this is perfect. Yeah. Yes.
That's the perfect content for this. So she is supposed to be in bed, but that's one of our daughters. And then we have another little girl who's 6 months old, and she is sleeping soundly.
Nice. As soon as they can walk, right? That's when all bets are off. Is that the rule? Or
once the crib is gone, really, I think that's the adventurous phase. So.
Well, we can get back to the kiddos in a second. I'm curious, would you take us back to the very beginning of your guys' relationship? How did you two meet?
Yes. Okay. We actually met in a math class. We were both
like all great love stories, right?
Yeah, we both love math. So.
Yeah.
So we met in a math class. This was way early in our freshman year, actually, I think before it officially started. We were in a math class together, and then it lasted throughout the first semester. And I think the second it didn't, but we became we were acquaintances. We knew of each other basically because of this math class. Like Cody played football in college. And I was just heavily involved in a lot of random things, and our paths crossed eventually. Once we became a little bit more involved in a campus ministry organization. Both of us came to know Jesus in early college. And so once we got a little bit more involved in that campus organization, we got to know each other even more. We were still acquaintances, definitely, but saw each other more often. I think dating, how that came about was really interesting. There's just a lot of things in our past dating lives that we kind of led up to when Cody showed interest in me right? That's how it went. You showed interest in me first.
Yeah, that's how it was.
Okay. Yes. I was actually I was taken aback, and I was like, oh, this guy likes me? What the heck? I always thought he was cute, but didn't really know that he was interested. And so he asked me out, and then I was just I said no. Actually, I was in a little phase in a fast, I would consider, of just not interested in dating at the time. And he waited. He was very patient. And then once we were seeking wisdom from other people in our lives, and we kind of realized hey, we actually really like each other. That's when we were okay, I think that's when I was okay, I think I'm ready to actually start dating you. And so I think we only dated for 7 months, I think, officially dated for 7 months. And that was our senior year of college. And so we both graduated and decided to actually be overseas missionaries after we graduated from college. And both of us ended up on the same team and went to the same country in East Asia. And it was awesome. It was a great experience. But going back to that, we actually got engaged before we left for East Asia. So we were dating for 7 months and then engaged overseas for 13 months. And as soon as we got back, yeah,
so
it was crazy.
Were you planning a wedding during this time, or were you like, we'll plan it all when we get back?
No, we planned a wedding with the 12-hour difference, talking to like a florist and like a venue person. And yes, while all that was happening.
Would not recommend that, but yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I thank my mom for all the help that she did when she was here. But yeah, and then we got married 2 months after we got back, and so it was lovely, and that was just a whole whirlwind of kind of our dating and engagement season. And then you can talk a little bit about our early marriage.
Oh, I'm curious. First, Cody, is there anything that Darcy left out about the dating process, or is that all pretty solid?
Yeah, it was. I mean, she did a great job. I would say I knew of Darcy in college, and we met when we were still like very much seeking our faith, and we weren't really interested in each other. We knew each other, like I said, and we kind of hung out around the same people. But really, when we were in this campus ministry, we saw each other more, and I just really enjoyed seeing her, especially as we were juniors and seniors, take a role that she just cared about other women, and especially like underclassmen, and they would come to her, and just how much respect they had for her in that, like the roles that she led in the organization. And it was something that was really attractive for me as a guy who was just new to my faith as well. And it was something that I was like, oh, she's a leader. And yeah, that really brought me to Darcy. Early dating was interesting because, like she said, she was kind of on a fast from dating. She really had an interesting relationships in the past, and she just wanted to take a break. And I, on the other hand, didn't date at all through college. I had interesting relationships in high school that I didn't really enjoy. And I was just like, you know what? I don't need to date. I'll be fine. Like, I need to figure myself out for 4 years. But then right when I wanted to, it was like, no, you can't. And so I just was like, you know what? I've waited for 3 years, and you're someone that I would love to pursue. If it takes you time, like, that's totally fine. I'll wait until you're ready. And yeah, it was pretty great once we both realized that, okay, let's actually date and see what this looks like. So
as you guys were dating and you're hanging out with this campus ministry, and obviously at some point you're planning on going on this mission trip, how involved were like faith conversations in what you guys would talk about? Was that like an important factor that was like a thing that was important for you guys to discuss, or what did that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the number one thing I think also attracted me to Cody, was that he was somebody who knew Jesus and wanted to continue to pursue him alongside me, and ultimately like Jesus first. And it was just such a cool thing for me to see that as just somebody who, like, yeah, maybe my previous relationships didn't necessarily look like that. And so to have Cody who was interested in Jesus and me, I was like, this was cool. And someone who I just adored. So yeah, faith conversations, constant. Yeah, we would talk about and still talk about Jesus all the time.
Yeah, it was just, especially at that season of our life, we're newer in our faith, and there's something that we really felt like we either were, it was a thing that was going to be part of our life, or it wasn't. And we decided in college that this was going to be a big part of our life, and we weren't going to be on the fence about our faith anymore. We wanted to figure out what faith looked like, what a relationship with Jesus looked like, and we were both like fully on board. Our hearts for missions were because of this organization. Like, knowing that there are people in different countries that don't have the opportunity to hear about Jesus was a big part of our heart. And so we talked about that all the time, and we wanted to be kind of on the same page with our faith, especially if we went on a mission trip and decided to be like full-time missionaries or something like that. That was a big part of our talk. And I would say there was also a little conflict in that, because Darcy was very passionate about being a full-time missionary, and I wasn't sure about it. And so there was plenty of talks about faith and like what it looked like in the future. And even when we were dating, it's like, should we be dating? Because like, maybe we're pulled in different directions, and like the Lord is having us go separate ways. And so that was something we had to struggle through as well, I guess, in one way or another. So.
Yeah, I'm curious. As you guys are having these faith conversations, like, what did the dynamic of that look like? Was that like, hey, here are my like 10 theological principles, or was it like, was it more, I don't know, down to earth than that? I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say more down to earth. I guess it was more. We both had like man. I guess we both learned more about our faith when we were in college and through the
Yeah.
same organization. So we had a good foundation, and we were in like Bible studies in college and things that were associated with the same group. And so
Yeah.
we felt like we were on the pretty much on the same page at the same level, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I think it was more down to earth conversations about like future stuff. Like when we started dating, we were seniors in college, and it was like, okay, what's next? Like, yeah, we're going to go on this mission trip, and we ended up being on the same team for that year. But then what after that? Like, does God have us going in the same place? Like, where are our hearts? And yeah, where is He leading us? I guess was a struggle because
Yeah.
we saw good in both choices that
Right.
both of us kind of had laid out in front of us, and we're like, they're both good. So should we even do it together, or are we supposed to be all different directions?
Yes, or can we find a compromise?
Or can we work this out? Which is what ended up happening. Obviously.
Sorry to spoil the story, but we did get married. So.
Okay, yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you both like seeking wisdom from other people was an important factor of early on in your relationship. I'm sure that led into, you're going to get married, right? So before you guys got married, I'm sure you sought wisdom. I'm sure people gave you wisdom, whether you sought it or not, because that's what happens during that process. What was some of the advice that you guys got? And I mean, you can share if it was good advice. You can share if it was terrible advice. We don't have to throw anybody under the bus here, but I mean.
Yeah, I think actually, yes, I think one of the things that we were just kind of talking about, John, is how like it was important for us to have that same thought process and the same values. And that was a piece of advice that I was given when I was processing, basically, should I be dating Cody? Is, well, do you have these similar values? Like, one of the things that I like to say that I did also get from somebody else as well is like, you're never going to find that perfect person. And it might sound, well, like, duh, you're not. But in that seeking process, I was expecting, almost like, this. I want this man to have all of these qualities and characteristics. And of course, Cody fits a lot of those, but he's not perfect, and I'm not either. And so finding that person that will like basically run towards Jesus and that same, path as you at the same pace, like that's the person, that you kind of like line up with and is like, I want to do this for the rest of my life with you, is just run towards Jesus. And so I think that was really, really important for us to have those same thoughts and values.
How do you discover those things? Like, was that like we mentioned earlier, was that just conversations about faith in general? Was that just like being very clear and saying, hey, look, Cody, this is where I'm going. Where are you headed? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think it was in conversation, absolutely, like talking to him, but also like getting to know the people that he knew. I think that was important to know his friends and the community that he was involved in. And because a big part of that community that I was also involved in knew Cody, that really helped for me to see, like, are his words also being put into action? And that was really helpful, I think, at the time. And now also we were in college in a campus ministry. And so that is like a very small part of the giant world, right? But it still was really helpful in the process of like, this is somebody that I see myself with for the rest of my life. Who does he know? And, what do they say about him? And everybody always, still to this day, speaks very highly of Cody. And I know I made the right choice.
Yeah, I would say similarly. It wasn't just, I had the opportunity to see Darcy in these roles, I guess, and see like where she filled her time. like she was meeting with other women on our campus, and obviously, just being on campus is a very unique experience, where you have a little bit of flexibility and you're able to explore a lot of things, including faith. And so Darcy just took that time to just really pour into other women, meet with them, talk about how they're doing in their walk with the Lord, and just challenging other women. And like I said earlier, that was really something that was attractive to me. I was like, wow, she's a leader, and people really respect her. And I got to see what other people said about her, but also like what she did with her time, and the actions that she made as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. Wow. What a power couple. What a power couple. Okay. So you guys are married. You guys married for 6 years? Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. Going on 6 years next month. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay. So you now can write a letter, or I don't know, you can shoot a text, whatever it is, whatever your favorite conversation tactic is, to yourself right before you get married. What advice do you give yourself?
Like right now, going back to like before I got married to Cody.
It's like, I don't know, a week before the wedding or whatever. And you're trying to best prepare you for married life. What advice do you give?
Oh man. So it's an interesting question, because with my wife, it's probably going to be very different than other people's. So
you're going to have to unpack that one for us.
to marry Darcy is different than many other people, and she'd probably say the same with me. And I think everyone has these individual characteristics that you have to learn, and I think that's actually part of the process, is understanding that you are a broken individual who has a lot of weird things that you just feel are totally normal. And that other person is a broken individual who has a whole bunch of odd things that they feel like are totally normal.
Yeah.
They go up with those things. And even their household dynamics, like how your parents did things, you just take as like, that's how everybody does things, right? Yeah. And you learn small tidbits how that's not true when you have your first roommate, right? Like when you live with like a friend or whatever, and then all of a sudden when you're married, it's like a very similar thing where you're like, wow, what, you don't do this way? Oh, okay. We got to talk about this, And so some of those things, I think for us, what was helped before, I don't know if this ties into the question, but something that helped us before was pre-marriage counseling. Mm-hmm. So we had sat with a couple who was a life stage ahead of us, if you will. And they had some kids and they got married and they were also believers. And it was something that was really impactful for us to talk about a lot of weird things that we were like, that's a goofy question. Like, why would you even ask that? But they were really helpful questions, right? And things that we still think about today. We're like, wow, we're really glad that we did that with someone at the next stage than us. And that was super helpful. Just realizing that we come from different families and we're trying to meld into our own, like, what does our family look like now? And so, doing things like pre-marriage counseling was helpful. A week before, that might.
Okay, I have to ask now. What was the goofiest question? What was an example of a goofy question you guys got asked?
I mean, like back in the day when it was like, who would help do the dishes? It's like, well, of course we both, make messes. So of course we would both clean up. And then like years later, we're like, oh wow, this is still a conversation that we're having,
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. So to touch on what you're saying, Cody, that there's, you discover that there's these odd things about each other that maybe you're like, maybe that's irritating. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But like, how have you guys learned to like have conversations about those things and work through those things?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely always perfect. There's always to improve communication with your spouse. And I will continue to grow in that and continue to learn. But with that, I would say allowing, just like with friends, you allow that room, that margin for grace, right? You're like, you know what? Like they thinking the best of that other person that you married, I think is really important, and saying like, oh wow, they left something on the ground, a towel, or they left their coffee cup sitting there and like they don't know it's there. Little things that you're like, I don't understand, but just giving them that room to, okay, like they didn't do it intentionally to hurt me, or maybe I'm just a neat freak, or like I'm just overthinking this, but giving them that room to, that grace in order to, what, it's okay. Like we can work through this. We can have conversations about this if it's really something that bothers me. And those conversations aren't always like rainbows and flowers, right? They're like sometimes really hard conversations, and just being real with one another and expressing how you feel with that other person I think is really, really valuable. So
Yeah. I love that idea of assuming the best. That's really powerful. Darcy, what do you think on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the same thing of just having those conversations and being open, like to be like receiving to that as well. Like I know there's been times when Cody has approached me with something and I'm like maybe thrown off guard, or I'm just like, oh, he's saying this because of this reason, right? And not thinking the best of him in that moment, and not giving him that room. And it's like I've learned, and I'm still learning what that looks like in those moments of, okay, this is important to Cody right now. In my mind, God comes first and then comes Cody, right? My spouse comes next. And so I need to like really give him my full attention in this moment because this is important to him. And so how can I then continuously learn? And I know I fail in multiple ways, but giving him that space and that margin that he needs to process it, and then to like meet him where he's at, right? And I know we'll talk about this too. And then having kids, there's like that just throws everything off and like a new loop. It's like, oh, hello, now the toddler's you're also trying to have this conversation. And it's like, what thing? So overstimulate is a real thing. And so yeah, it's just. But it's good. I see a lot of growth in me from that.
Was there any advice you guys got that, and the answer could be no, and we could edit this chunk out. But was there any advice you guys got that you were like, you know what? I don't know if that applies for us, or I don't know if that was actually like the most helpful thing, or maybe that's something that like isn't actually great advice.
Yeah, can I actually say this? And I don't know how other people will feel. And this is just my thought process is the advice. Oh, okay. Bear with me. Here we go. To not go to bed angry with your spouse. That truthfully has happened more than once in my life, in my marriage, that it's been interesting, right? I've gone to bed angry with my spouse before. Maybe it's because he's gone to bed before me, or I go to bed before him, whatever that looks like. But I definitely have done that. And I think I always feel guilty in that time where I'm like angry and I'm falling asleep. But what I've come to learn, because I feel guilty because that was the advice that I was given of like, don't do that. But what I've learned is to really pray through that. And because ultimately for me, Jesus is my savior. He is my Lord. He is the one that gives me full satisfaction. That when I am angry with my spouse, that I'm able to go to him, to run to Jesus and be like, okay, this is what's happening. These are my thoughts and my feelings. I need to pray through this and work through this with you, Jesus. And then I have done this before where I've woken up in the morning, and either that morning or that evening, whenever we have time, is to really process through that with Cody, where I'm like, hey, I was angry and this is why. Because one, I was able to pray through it, and also, gave some time to think. And so I think that was some advice that I don't necessarily take. I see where it's so beneficial, and at the same time, I don't know. I've learned elsewhere otherwise.
I'm super curious because there may be people listening that the concept of like praying through something is just like what does that even mean? So what does it look like for you to like say this example, like you're angry at Cody because he left a dish on the counter. I don't know what exactly the thing is, right? But you're still angry at Cody. How do you pray through that?
Yeah. In that example, it'd be just like, I would be laying in my bed and just like open my heart and my mind up to having a conversation to Jesus and just say what I'm feeling in that moment of Jesus, I am angry. Cody left a dish on the counter when I asked him not to, and I'm angry. And this is how I feel. But God, I know that you are here, that you're listening to me, that you care about my feelings in this moment, and that you love Cody more than I do. And you are cheering for our marriage more than I am, more than Cody is, more than anybody else is, that you want us to, be married and to be successful in our marriage, whatever that might look like, right? And so, God, I know that I'm angry, but you are king, and I need you in this moment, right? And so, kind of talking to him and working through my heart, the feelings and the emotions that I'm having, and then understanding that God loves me and loves Cody so much that he wants the best for us always.
That just sounds like such a grounding thing, like a recentering, I don't know about, I'm sure you guys experience this, but when there's anger, when there's hard feelings, like it's so hard to take yourself out of that and have like I said, like a grounding moment. And that sounds like a very powerful way to experience that and kind of recenter and shift your perspective into really God's view of the situation. Yeah, Cody, any thoughts on the bad advice or what Darcy shared?
Oh man, I try not to remember bad advice. That being said, I would say just going off of Darcy, just recognizing what your spouse appreciates in regards to like how Darcy communicates and how I communicate can look very differently, and understanding and talking through like, okay, how do you feel loved, like, or how like in this situation, like what would be better to do, right? Because you got frustrated with that. Okay, what would you prefer instead? Or even bringing up, okay, like when you do something wrong, or like how should I respond? How should I bring it up to you? Because sometimes you get really defensive, like when someone calls you out on something, right? And you're like, this is just what I do, this is just me. Like, why are you feel like it's a personal attack sometimes. And a lot of times it's just like that one behavior that you did that they're like, well, why do you have to do it this way? And just understanding how you communicate with your spouse about things that frustrate them as well, because you don't want to always feel like you're on your heels, and if your spouse allows you to have that freedom to communicate, like, hey, this is how you can bring up, if you're mad at me about something, bring it up this way, because I won't get as defensive and I'll know you just are trying, like, have my best intention at heart. So
I feel like you have to have your mindset really does have to be on what's best for our marriage in that moment, right? Because it's like, sometimes I know that it's like, well, maybe you don't want to communicate it that way or whatever, but it's like what you really want most is to have a healthy marriage and to love your partner well, And so I think that is such good advice of like almost like learning how to communicate better in the language that the other person understands. That's really good. That's really good. Okay. So now I have to ask, because there's a little kiddo that is just wants a microphone, like I can understand that. In fact, I respect that. That's nice. We can help her out. So obviously two kids enter the picture. Okay. How has that changed the dynamic of your marriage?
Yeah. I think, in so many ways. And the one way that I guess I was processing this before we had this conversation is, I guess I didn't really realize how our marriage would look so different in so many different seasons. And one of the things that Cody and I did also go through is, after we got married, immediately Cody started grad school. And so he was in grad school for three and a half years. And so like our marriage looked very different then. And then right after grad school, we had our first kiddo, and having a first kiddo was challenging. We had some like family trauma that happened as well. And so it was just like, there's a lot of challenges that we went through with that. And then we were able to move, change jobs a couple times, figure all this stuff out, have a second kid. And just all throughout that, it's just been change and transition and growth, right? But man, our marriage has looked different in all of those seasons. And I think right now, as much as we've gone through so much, this is probably one of the hardest seasons I think we've been in. We just started our own small business as well. And so it's been really awesome in so many different ways. But yeah, having, a, like recognizing what our marriage looks like right now in this season, it's kind of been like, wow, I see you maybe for like an hour and a half, just the two of us, because otherwise we have the kids constantly, or work or whatever it looks like. And so there's been a lot of change and transition, I think, that's happened.
Yeah, one thing I like to tell new couples that are like pregnant or like wanting to have a kiddo, it's like I remember when Darcy and I just what we really loved to do when we were dating, we loved to go for walks. And I never thought about it at all. Like I just took it for granted. And we went for walks and we talked and it was like in the evening, like before bed, after supper. And then you have your first kiddo, and I was like, man, we can't just leave them like sleeping upstairs. Go
Good
for a
job.
walk.
Good job. You passed
And
your first test. Yeah.
But no, it was just a shocker. I was like, well, I can't do this very simple thing spouse anymore, and it just changed. And it's such a little thing, but it had a huge impact on me, and I didn't even think about it. Right? You're like excited for this kiddo, but really they're your responsibility now, and yeah, they take a lot of your time, and just one-on-one time with Darcy now it's just so much more valuable almost because we don't have that usually. So yeah.
Is there any is there any like bitterness that can come with that? Like, is there any moments of like having to be like, I don't know, grieving what's like change or things like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question because yes, like I think what we're learning is, of course, our we're so grateful and blessed that we can, that we have been able to expand our family, and we love our children so much. And it's hard. Like there's a lot of hardship that we experience within parenting. And then also when we really look at our marriage, a lot of it is about parenting and the children right now. And it's like there's been a couple times where we really have needed to step back and step out of what our lives are right now and kind of like reflect and remember and be like, okay, this is who you are. This is who I am. And, how are you? Not how are the kids, how are you? And so that has been definitely a big way that we've been changing in our conversations. And just recognizing again, like, yeah, what that kind of looks like in this young, we have young children. So that's like our young children season.
How do you do that? Is that taking a moment and like setting aside special date nights? Is that carving out like a certain time of day? Like, how do you create space for those things?
Yeah, I would say this is something that has been brought up just this year again, just because all the transition that Darcy spoke on earlier, like starting a new business, it's just been like a whirlwind for us. And with that, I love kids. Like I've always loved kids. I've always desired to be a father. Before I almost desired to be a husband, I was like, I just want to have kids so bad. And now that I have these adorable two little girls, I had a tendency to come home and just, you have this kind of like parent guilt. You're just like, I just want to be with them, and I'm at work and I'm like, okay, go home, spend time with the kids before bed because they go to bed, like they go to bed. Hopefully, I mean, right now, maybe not so much, but usually they go to bed at a certain time.
Yeah, unless there's an interview going on, right?
You don't have that time with them. And so I fell into this pattern of focusing on my two daughters before my wife. And I saw how that was taxing on her. And I've been changing my habits recently to the first thing I do when I get home and open the door to go to my wife and talk to her and give her a kiss and ask her about her day, because she is still my priority, right? My kids, I love them dearly, but my wife is still my priority. And I think that was something huge that I just started implementing, and I have really enjoyed that so far.
Was that something that you just noticed on your own, or was that something that you guys had like a conversation about to like recognize?
Yeah, we definitely had a conversation about it. I don't know. My wife currently is a stay-at-home mom, and she's with the girls all the time, and she is exhausted a lot of times. And so it was something that Darcy brought up to me, and she's like, you know what? Like, I feel like we're not connecting as much, and like, I see you're a great father, and you're doing all these things wonderfully, but I just feel like we're losing something. And I recognized it, and I actually talked to some guys in a group I'm in, and they gave me that advice, and it was great advice. I really appreciate them sharing, and that's something that I really want to advocate for, is like being in different groups and studies and things that you can have people sharpen you in different seasons of their life. They've experienced things that you just haven't, and being part of a community, of a group that you can just be honest and authentic with, and they can share, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Like sometimes they just give a lot of advice, but a lot of times you get nuggets of wisdom that you'll just hold on to for the rest of your life, and then hopefully you can share that and bless someone with that advice later.
You just encapsulated such a powerful process, just like in your guys' marriage, like that process, so powerful. The ability to like verbalize and like actually talk through something when bothering you. And then taking that moment and being like, okay, what changes can I make? Not from like what have I done wrong or how do I fall short, but like, hey, what can I do to really help this be different and help us grow together? And vetting it through like friends and people you trust. Wow. What? Wow. That's it. That's all I got. That's my great podcasting skills. Wow. Oh, that's so good.
It took 6 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It
Okay.
wasn't just like, yeah. No. No, it's a process, and that's something it's totally true. It's a continued process. We'll continue to have seasons of life that are probably harder than this one, and different seasons will come up. And knowing that your relationship's going to look different in seasons, but allowing you to have this foundation, like where our foundation lies, is like on our faith and on Jesus, and that relationship that we have, knowing that He loves us more than we love each other, which is mind blowing, right? When you have, especially when you're early on in marriage, you're like, this person is amazing. And then you have kids and you're like, these kids are just incredible. Like, I don't know how I could love anything else as much as these kids. And like, God loves us more than all those things. And having that as your foundation is so powerful. And then through that, like, that's our foundation. That's how we can show love to each other. So, yeah, I think that's pivotal.
Boom. Okay. So boom, brain explosion. My final question for you guys. So I'm sure, I sent over these questions. I asked you if you guys wanted to be part of the interview. I'm sure you guys chatted with it. Is there anything that like you were both hoping to share in those conversations that you'd love to share now that maybe I haven't thought of to ask, but
Yeah, I would say one thing that a lot of younger guys who are either getting married or early on, and well, probably before marriage, they ask about like, okay, what should I expect? Like things like that. A lot of times what I tell them is you don't realize how selfish you are until you're like finally married. And even when you're dating, you feel like you're being so selfless, right? You're like, man, I'm doing all these crazy things for this person who I really enjoy. And I'm doing all these extra works and like showing all this like love to this person. And I'm being like sacrificial, right? And really, like all those things are great. And they might be sacrificial and they might be just incredible things, but they're all like on your own time. And like, like they're very different than now that I'm married, I'm with this person 24/7. Like they see me when I'm at my worst, like I see them when they're just in a bad mood. And like, but you realize in those moments, like, man, I am so selfish. Like it's something that you don't realize until you're in this situation where you're with that person 100% of the time, like doing life with them. And you're like, really the whole time I just wanted what I want. And I think it hits like double time when you have kids. You're like, wow, like we thought we like got a test of humility when we got married. Like, man, now we have kids and we realize like we don't even have any hobbies anymore. No, no, but really like you realize like you're another level of like, wow, I was just like really selfish and and now I can experience this like selflessness and humility. And not that you can't like before you're married, but it's just a lot different. It just feels like you're like, wow, this is something. Like I have this other person is in my life 100%. Like we're in this game together now. It's not just me. So yeah, that's something that really hit me specifically.
Mm-hmm. And going with that, I think for me, one of the things, like I mentioned, of like those transitions that we've been through, those seasons that we've been through, I think something that I have reflected on every single season is I look at Cody and I am so thankful that I married him. And we say this oftentimes. We're like hug each other and we're like, this is so hard, but I don't want to be doing this with anybody else. Like I want to be doing this with you. Even though like this is it, we're just going through the muck, it's just been so tough. Whatever that might look like, it's just so good to look at him and be like, nope, I see that God put Cody in my life, that we're married, and like I said, God is cheering for our marriage always, and I see how God is using Cody in my life in so many different ways, and I'm just like so thankful that I'm just doing all of this hard things, all these hard things and all these good things with him.
That's such really good stuff. Thank you guys. Thank you both so much for sharing with me, for sharing with everybody listening. And I feel like I could talk to you guys about this for a long time, but I'll let you go. I'll let you go with your kiddo. And thank you so much for sharing with us.
John, we're honored. Thank you so much for asking us to be a part of the podcast. You're amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, John.
Well, that was my conversation with Darcy and Cody, and I really want to thank them for being willing to share and be honest and open about what they've learned in marriage and what that journey has been like. I think they offer a super helpful perspective of understanding the different transitions that happen in marriage and how valuable it is to get wisdom from couples in that stage that you're about to head into. I also love the conversation about being willing to grow and listen to your partner and having close friends in your life that can help support your marriage by helping you grow and process the conversations that you have with them when they share those things to help you grow. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ridge Podcast, and make sure to follow and subscribe so that you don't miss any hopeful and helpful conversations.